Get on your knees, boy! You and your whole family now! Officer Richards towers over Damon Clark, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness of this upscale Sacramento suburb where homes sell for nearly $1 million. Officer, this is our home. Damon replies calmly, his voice carrying an undertone of authority that doesn't match his position. He stands protectively in front of his wife Sarah and twin daughters, all dressed in their finest clothes, having just returned from an academic awards ceremony. "I don't care if you own the whole damn neighborhood, get down!" Richard screams, his hand moving to his weapon. "On your knees! All of you!" The family exchanges glances. There's something in Damon's eyes, not fear, but a cold calculation. But Damon doesn't flinch. Instead, he stares directly into the neighbor's security camera across the street, as if he's sending a message to someone. Someone who's watching, someone who's coming. Officer Richards has no idea who he's dealing with. Have you ever underestimated someone based on what you thought you knew about them? 3 months earlier, the Clark family moved into 1247 Maple Street in Riverside Heights, an affluent Sacramento suburb where the lawns are perfectly manicured and the silence is broken only by the hum of luxury cars. They were the first black family on a street lined with million-dollar homes, and the neighbors noticed. Damon Clark appears to be exactly what you'd expect from a successful mechanic. He owns Brotherhood Customs, a motorcycle repair shop on the outskirts of town. The business seems legitimate enough. Vintage Harleys line the garage, chrome gleaming under fluorescent lights, and there's always the sound of engines being tuned to perfection. But the customers are unusual. Tough-looking men in leather jackets arrive on thundering motorcycles, staying for hours in hushed conversations with Damon. To anyone watching, they look like typical bikers getting their rides serviced. What the neighbors don't see are the respectful nods these men give Damon, the way they wait for his word before speaking, the deference in their voices when they call him boss. Sarah works as a hospital administrator at UC Davis Medical Center, respected by colleagues and earning a 6-figure salary. Maya and Zoe are honor students, debate team champions, already accepted to prestigious universities with full scholarships. On paper, the Clarks are the American dream incarnate. Yet the wellness checks started almost immediately. 3 times in as many months, police have knocked on their door responding to anonymous calls about suspicious activity. Each time, the officers found nothing but a family living their lives. Each time, Damon handled the interactions with an unusual calm that seemed almost practiced. The weekend gatherings are what really set tongues wagging. Every Saturday, a dozen or more motorcycles park outside the Clark home. The riders wear leather vests and carry themselves with the swagger of men who've seen trouble. Neighbors assume it's some kind of motorcycle club meeting, but they have no idea what kind of club it really is. Damon's workshop in the garage tells a different story to those who know what to look for. Yes, there are motorcycle parts and tools, but there's also equipment that seems oddly sophisticated for a simple repair shop. Communication devices, detailed maps of Northern California, and photographs of men in leather jackets, their faces always carefully obscured. During the week, Damon takes frequent business trips to what he calls motorcycle rallies throughout the state. He returns with stories of vintage bike shows and racing events, but Sarah notices the tension in his shoulders when he comes home, the way he checks and double-checks the locks on their doors. "Remember," he tells his daughters as they drive home from their awards ceremony tonight, "family always comes first. No matter what happens, we protect each other." It's a philosophy that runs deeper than most people understand. In Damon's world, family isn't just blood. It's a brotherhood forged in loyalty and sealed with an oath that some men would die to honor. The girls clutch their academic achievement certificates as they pull into their driveway, proud of another successful evening. But as the headlights sweep across their front yard, they have no idea that this ordinary Tuesday night is about to change everything. What appears to be a simple case of racial profiling is actually something far more complex. Because sometimes the quiet family man next door isn't quite what he seems. 10:15 p.m. The call comes in as a burglary in progress at 1247 Maple Street. An anonymous neighbor reports seeing multiple black males breaking into a house with expensive cars in the driveway. The dispatcher notes the address is in Riverside Heights, where break-ins are virtually unheard of. Officers Richards and Wilson respond in separate patrol cars, expecting to find criminals fleeing the scene. Instead, they arrive to see a family of 4 calmly unloading flowers and certificates from a Honda Accord. "Freeze! Hands up!" Richards shouts, his weapon already drawn before he's even out of his vehicle. His partner Wilson hesitates, noting the family's formal attire and the obvious signs of a celebration. "Officers, this is our home," Damon says, stepping protectively in front of his wife and daughters. There's something in his voice, a quiet authority that suggests he's used to being in control of difficult situations. "Shut up! I didn't ask you to speak!" Richard snaps back, his flashlight beam dancing aggressively across their faces. "Get on your knees, all of you now!" Sarah gasps, her hand instinctively reaching for her daughters. "Please, officer, we just came home from our daughter's award ceremony. I can show you our house keys." "I said get down!" Richard screams, spittle flying from his mouth. "On your knees, hands behind your heads, move!" The family looks to Damon, who nods slowly. One by one, they sink to the cold concrete of their own driveway. As Damon kneels, his expensive slacks touching the ground, the body camera catches the glint of a thick ring on his right hand, something with an unusual design that's hard to make out in the darkness. "Keep your head down, boy," Richards barks, stepping closer to Damon. His boot connects with Damon's shoulder, not hard enough to knock him over, but enough to assert dominance. "I said don't look at me!" But Damon doesn't flinch. His jaw clenches, and for a moment something dangerous flickers in his eyes before he controls it. He's kneeling, yes, but there's nothing submissive about his posture. The degradation escalates quickly. Richard circles the kneeling family like a predator, his radio crackling with backup requests. "We've got 4 suspects in custody, possible breaking and entering in progress." "Dad?" Maya whispers, tears streaming down her face as she kneels beside her sister. "It's okay, baby," Damon says quietly, his voice steady despite the humiliation. "Just stay calm. This will be over soon." Richards overhears and laughs coldly. "Over soon? Boy, your night is just getting started." He kicks at the scattered certificates on the ground. "Academic achievement awards? Real convenience? Where'd you steal these from?" Sarah's voice breaks as she speaks. "Those are our daughter's awards from tonight. Maya won the state debate championship, and Zoe received the President's Academic Excellence Award. Please, just let us show you our identification." "Shut up!" Richards roars. Then he does something that crosses every line of human decency. He places his boot on Damon's back and pushes down, forcing him toward the ground. "I said keep your head down! You hear me, boy?" The pressure increases, and Damon's hands press against the concrete to keep from falling face first onto the driveway. His daughters are sobbing now, watching their father, their hero, being treated like an animal. Officer Wilson steps forward, clearly uncomfortable. "Richards, maybe we should just check their IDs and—" "Stay back, Wilson," Richards snaps. "These people are playing us. Look at this neighborhood. Look at them. You think they can afford to live here legitimately?" Wilson's body camera captures everything. The expensive cars in the driveway, the well-maintained home, the family's obvious distress. But Richards is beyond reason now, drunk on his own authority. "Please don't hurt my daddy!" Zoe cries out, her academic medal catching the streetlight as it dangles from her neck. Richards laughs, a cold sound that makes Wilson shift uncomfortably. "Your daddy should have thought about that before he decided to rob houses in neighborhoods where he doesn't belong." He grinds his boot harder into Damon's back. "Maybe this will teach him some respect." "This is our neighborhood," Sarah screams, her composure finally breaking. "We live here. We own this house. Our mortgage statements are right inside." "Sure you do, sweetheart," Richard sneers. "And I'm the President of the United States." He increases the pressure on Damon's back, forcing him to brace harder against the concrete. "Tell you what, let's see some real ID. But first, your husband here needs to learn about respect." Neighbors are gathering now. Mrs. Patterson from across the street opens her door, her elderly face creased with concern. The Johnson family next door steps onto their porch, cell phones recording. Children peer through upstairs windows as their parents whisper urgent conversations about whether to intervene. "Everybody watching?" Richards calls out to the growing audience. "This is what happens when people try to live above their station." Then comes the moment that will define everything that follows. "Here's what's going to happen," Richards announces loudly enough for all the neighbors to hear. Your husband is going to crawl to my patrol car like the dog he is, and then we're going to sort this whole thing out down at the station." The words hit like a physical blow. Crawl, in front of his wife, in front of his daughters, in front of the neighbors who are now gathering at windows and doorways, some recording with their phones. "Officer," Damon says, his voice low and controlled, "I need you to reconsider what you're doing here." There's something in his tone that makes Wilson take a step back, but Richards is too far gone in his power trip to notice the warning. The way Damon says it isn't pleading. It's almost advisory, like he's giving Richards a chance to step back before something irreversible happens. "You need to do what?" Richards laughs again. "Boy, you're in no position to need anything except maybe a good lawyer. Now crawl to my car or I'll drag you there myself." The moment stretches like a taut wire. Damon's hands are flat against the concrete, his family watching in horror, neighbors recording everything. He could resist, he could fight back, but with his daughters watching, with guns drawn, he makes the choice that will haunt Richards for the rest of his life. Slowly, deliberately, Damon Clark begins to crawl across his own driveway. "That's right," Richards calls out, his voice carrying across the quiet neighborhood. "Crawl like the dog you are. Let everyone see what happens when you try to live above your station." As Damon moves forward on his hands and knees, his expensive shirt tearing on the rough concrete, the camera catches something that will matter later, his ring scraping against the ground, the Hell's Angels insignia now clearly visible for a split second. More importantly, as he crawls past the neighbor's security camera, he looks directly into the lens. The expression on his face isn't defeat or humiliation. It's a calculation. It's a man making mental notes about every detail, every witness, every second of this degradation. It's the look of someone who understands that sometimes you have to lose a battle to win a war. "Look at your man now, ladies!" Richard shouts to Sarah and the girls, who are still forced to kneel and watch their father's humiliation. "This is what your husband really is. This is his true place." But what Richards doesn't understand is that some humiliations cut so deep they wake up forces that should have been left sleeping. As Damon reaches the patrol car, still on his hands and knees, he speaks just loud enough for the body camera to pick up his words. "Remember this moment," he says quietly. And though he appears to be speaking to his family, there's something in his tone that suggests the message is meant for someone else entirely. Someone who will hear about this, someone who will remember. "Now apologize," Richards commands, standing over Damon's kneeling form. "Apologize to your family for embarrassing them like this." Damon looks up, not at Richards, but at his daughters. "I'm sorry you had to see this," he says, and every neighbor, every camera, every witness hears the weight in those words. What they don't hear is the rest of the message, the part that's communicated in a glance, in the way his hand briefly touches that ring, in the set of his shoulders despite his position on the ground. Some apologies are promises in disguise. The handcuffs click shut around Damon's wrists as neighbors watch from their porches, cell phones capturing every moment. Sarah and the girls are finally allowed to stand, their knees scraped and bleeding from the concrete, their formal clothes torn and dirty from the ordeal. "Daddy!" Maya screams as Richards forces Damon into the back of the patrol car, but he can only look back at them through the window, his face calm despite everything that's just happened. "Take the family inside," Officer Wilson tells Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Sarah's colleague from the hospital who lives 3 houses down and has rushed over after hearing the commotion. They're free to go, as if they were ever not free. As if they weren't just humiliated on their own property for the crime of coming home. The booking process at Sacramento County Jail is routine until it isn't. Damon Clark, no middle name, age 48, address confirmed. Clean record, not even a traffic ticket. But when his fingerprints hit the system, something unusual happens. The computer screen flickers, processing for longer than normal, and the booking officer's expression changes. He reaches for his phone, makes a quiet call. "Sergeant? We've got a Clark, Damon Clark, just booked on suspicious activity. Yeah, that's the guy from the viral video that's already starting to spread. But sir, there's something else. His background check is unusual." At 11:47 p.m., Damon makes his one phone call. Not to a lawyer, not to Sarah, but to a number most people would never think to memorize. "Hammer. It's iron." His voice is calm, controlled, but anyone who knows him would recognize the deadly undertone. Code red situation. Full rally protocol. Spread the word to every chapter from Sacramento to San Francisco. The conversation is brief, professional. Understood, boss. How many brothers? All of them, Damon says simply. And Hammer? Make sure they know what happened here tonight. Make sure they understand this wasn't just disrespect to me. This was disrespectful to the family, to the brotherhood. Copy that, Iron? We're rolling. By midnight, the video was already viral. Someone's neighbor footage, shaky but clear, shows a black man being forced to crawl across his own driveway while his family watches in horror. The hashtags start immediately. #forced to crawl, #justice for Clarks, #crawl like a dog. Sarah's interview with Channel 3 News at 6 a.m. is devastating. Standing in front of their home, still in her torn dress from the previous night, she speaks with the quiet dignity of a woman pushed beyond her breaking point. "They made my husband crawl like an animal in front of our daughters," she says, her voice steady but her eyes red from crying. "In front of our neighbors, on our own property, for coming home from our children's academic award ceremony." The reporter asks about the family's background. Sarah's response is perfect. Doctor, businessman, honor students, active in their church. The American dream destroyed in one night by a racist cop's power trip. But while Sarah is giving interviews and the internet explodes with outrage, something else is happening on the highways of Northern California. Motorcycles are moving. Not one or two, but dozens, then hundreds. The desk sergeant at Sacramento County notices it first. "Anyone else getting a lot of calls about motorcycles today?" he asks during the morning briefing. "Bikers asking about some guy named Clark?" Officer Wilson, who witnessed the whole arrest, shifts uncomfortably. He's been thinking about the incident all night, about the way Richards escalated everything, about the family's obvious distress. But it's more than that. There was something about the way Damon handled himself. Too calm, too controlled, like he was used to being in command. By noon, the strange calls to the jail have increased. Not from lawyers or civil rights groups, but from men with deep voices asking about Iron and when he's getting out. The caller ID shows numbers from all over the state, but there's a pattern the desk staff doesn't recognize yet. Meanwhile, at Iron Brotherhood Customs, things are happening that the neighbors have never seen before. The shop, usually quiet during weekdays, is suddenly buzzing with activity. Men in leather jackets arrive on motorcycles, their faces grim, their voices low and urgent. Thomas Hammer Rodriguez, Damon's second-in-command, coordinates everything from the shop's office. Phone calls go out to every Hells Angels charter from Redding to Los Angeles. The message is simple. Their president has been humiliated and the Brotherhood is mobilizing. "How many brothers confirmed?" Hammer asks his lieutenant. 200 and counting, comes the reply. Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose, Stockton, everybody's riding. Even got word from Fresno and Bakersfield chapters heading north. Richards, meanwhile, is celebrating. At Murphy's Bar, 3 blocks from the police station, he regales his buddies with stories from the night before. "You should have seen him crawl," he laughs, beer in hand. "Put that boy right in his place. Sometimes that's what it takes." His audience, other cops, some retired, some active, nods along. They've heard Richard's stories before, though usually they're careful about what they say and where they say it. But the viral video has made him confident, defiant. He doesn't care who hears. What he doesn't notice is the man in the leather jacket sitting alone at the end of the bar, nursing a whiskey and listening to every word. What he doesn't see is the phone call that man makes when he steps outside for a smoke. "Boss is right," the man says into his phone. "This pig has no idea what's coming." By 3 p.m., local news stations are reporting unusual motorcycle activity throughout the Bay Area and Central Valley. CHP officers note convoys of Harley-Davidsons heading toward Sacramento, all traveling within legal speed limits, all perfectly legal, but unprecedented in their organization and numbers. Chief Anderson, reviewing the viral video for the dozenth time, feels a cold knot forming in his stomach. The department's phones haven't stopped ringing. Civil rights lawyers, media requests, angry citizens, and strangely of all, dozens of calls from men asking about when Iron gets out. At 4:15 p.m., Detective Rebecca Stone from Internal Affairs gets the call that changes everything. A contact at the FBI wants to discuss Damon Clark's background check. It's a conversation that starts with routine questions and ends with Stone staring at her phone in disbelief. "What do you mean, complicated?" she asks. "I mean, your arrest last night might have just kicked over a very large anthill," the federal agent replies. "And you're about to find out what happens when you mess with the wrong guy's family." The sound starts around 5 p.m., a low rumble that residents of Sacramento have never heard before. It builds slowly, like distant thunder, but it doesn't fade. It gets louder and louder. By 6 p.m., the first motorcycles appear on the horizon. Detective Rebecca Stone sits in her internal affairs office, staring at a computer screen that has just turned her understanding of the world upside down. The FBI background check on Damon Clark isn't just unusual, it's revealing a truth so shocking that she has to read it 3 times before accepting what she's seeing. Damon Clark, owner of Iron Brotherhood Customs, clean criminal record, successful businessman, respected family man, and president of the Hells Angels Bay Area chapter. Not a member, not an associate. The president, the man who commands over 200 of the most feared bikers in Northern California. The man who was just forced to crawl like a dog in front of his family is the undisputed leader of one of the most powerful motorcycle clubs in America. "Jesus Christ," Stone whispers, reaching for her phone to call Chief Anderson. But before she can dial, her window begins to vibrate. A low rumble fills the air, growing steadily louder until it becomes unmistakable. Motorcycles, hundreds of them. From her third-floor office, Stone watches in amazement as Harley-Davidsons pour into Sacramento like a mechanized army. They move in perfect formation, not the chaotic arrival of weekend riders, but the disciplined convoy of an organized force. Each bike bears the distinctive patches and colors that law enforcement across the country has learned to recognize and respect. Hells Angels, and they're all heading toward downtown Sacramento. The revelation hits the police department like a tsunami. Chief Anderson, watching the aerial news footage of the motorcycle convoy, feels his career flashing before his eyes. His officers didn't just arrest an innocent family man, they humiliated the president of the Hells Angels in the most degrading way possible. "How many?" he asked Detective Stone over the phone. "The current count is over 200, sir, and more are arriving every hour. We've got chapters represented from 8 different cities." Anderson sinks into his chair, remembering every detail of the viral video. Richards forces Damon to his knees, the boot on his back, crawling across the driveway. And worst of all, the family, the president's family, was forced to watch their patriarch's humiliation. In the Hells Angels world, there is no greater sin than disrespecting the club's leadership. And there is no disrespect greater than what happened on that driveway last night. The pieces of Damon's carefully constructed civilian life now make perfect sense in this new context. Iron Brotherhood Customs isn't just a motorcycle repair shop, it's the legitimate front for Hells Angels operations in the region. Those weekend customers weren't getting their bikes fixed. They were receiving orders from their president. The business trips to motorcycle rallies were actually inter-chapter meetings where Damon coordinated activities across multiple states. The sophisticated equipment in his garage wasn't for motorcycle repair. It was communication gear for managing a complex organization that operates both within and outside the law. Thomas Hammer Rodriguez, the man Damon called from jail, isn't just a friend or employee. He's the vice president of the Hells Angels Bay Area chapter, Damon's second in command, and the man responsible for mobilizing the largest show of Hells Angels force in Sacramento's history. The phone call that started this mobilization was brief, but its implications are staggering. Code Red, in Hells Angels terminology, means an attack on club leadership. Full rally protocol means every available member drops what they're doing and responds. When Damon said all of them, he was calling in favors and loyalty that have been building for decades. News crews scramble to understand what they're witnessing. The aerial footage shows motorcycles stretching for miles on every major highway leading into Sacramento. These aren't random bikers heading to a rally. This is a coordinated response to an assault on their brotherhood. At Sacramento County Jail, the staff is beginning to understand that their prisoner isn't just another arrestee. The constant phone calls, the men in leather jackets gathering outside, the request for information about iron, it all makes sense now. They've been holding the president of the Hells Angels, and his people want him back. The media explosion is immediate and devastating. Within hours, every major news network is running the story. Police force Hells Angels president to crawl like dog. The viral video, already seen by millions, takes on new meaning when viewers understand who they're watching being humiliated. Social media erupts with disbelief and outrage. The image of a Hells Angels president being forced to crawl while his family watches becomes a symbol of police overreach that transcends racial lines. Bikers across the country, regardless of club affiliation, share the video with growing anger. But the most chilling aspect of the revelation isn't what it means for public relations. It's what it means for Officer Richards. Hells Angels have a reputation for loyalty that borders on the fanatical. They don't forget, they don't forgive, and they never let an attack on their leadership go unanswered. Richards, still unaware of the storm gathering around him, continues his victory lap at Murphy's bar. He has no idea that the man he forced to crawl commands the loyalty of hundreds of armed men who live by a code that makes revenge not just acceptable, but mandatory. The courthouse where Damon's bail hearing is scheduled becomes the epicenter of the largest motorcycle gathering in Sacramento's history. By 4 p.m., over 300 Hells Angels have assembled in perfect formation around the building. They don't block traffic. They don't cause trouble. They simply stand with their bikes in silent, intimidating solidarity. When Damon Clark walks out of that courthouse at 5:17 p.m., he doesn't emerge as the humiliated victim who was arrested the night before. He walks out as Iron, president of the Hells Angels Bay Area chapter, to face 300 brothers who have traveled hundreds of miles to show their loyalty. The moment is captured by every news camera in the city. Damon, still in his torn clothes from the night before, stands on the courthouse steps and looks out at an army of motorcycles. With a single nod from their president, 300 Harley-Davidson engines roar to life in perfect unison. The message is clear, and it reverberates through every law enforcement agency in California. You just humiliated the wrong man. Officer Richards, the man who thought he was teaching a lesson about knowing your place, is about to learn that sometimes the person you force to their knees commands more respect and loyalty than you could ever imagine. The Hells Angels don't just remember this kind of disrespect. They make sure it never happens again. The rumble of 300 motorcycles escorting Damon Clark home creates a sound Sacramento has never heard before. The convoy moves with military precision through the streets, and every police officer, every city official, every resident understands that the balance of power has fundamentally shifted. Chief Anderson stands at his office window, watching the organized procession past the police station. The Hells Angels maintain perfect formation, legal speed limits, and complete discipline. But their message is unmistakable. We know where you work. We know who you are. We remember what you did. The emergency meeting in the chief's conference room at 6 p.m. includes every ranking officer in the department, the mayor, the city attorney, and a hastily summoned FBI liaison. The viral video plays on the large screen, Officer Richards forcing Damon to crawl while his family watches. But now everyone knows they're watching the humiliation of a Hells Angels president. How the hell did we not know? Mayor Thompson demands, his face red with fury and panic. Detective Stone pulls up Damon's file. His record is spotless. Successful business owner, family man, no criminal history. The Hells Angels presidency isn't illegal. Many chapters operate legitimate businesses and maintain clean public profiles. That's not the point, the FBI liaison interjects. The point is that your officer just committed one of the most public acts of disrespect against Hells Angels leadership in decades. Do you understand what that means? The room falls silent except for the distant rumble of motorcycles still arriving in the city. Officer Wilson, who witnessed the entire arrest, finally speaks up. Richards has a history, he says quietly. This isn't the first time. I've been his partner for 8 months, and I've seen him escalate situations with black families before, but I never said anything because... Because what? Chief Anderson demands. Because I was a coward, Wilson admits. I should have stopped him last night. I should have reported him months ago. That family did nothing wrong, and I let Richards destroy them for sport. The confession opens floodgates. Detective Stone's investigation reveals a pattern of complaints against Richards stretching back 5 years, all involving black families, all dismissed or buried in paperwork. Traffic stops that became humiliating searches, wellness checks that became exercises in intimidation, a systematic campaign of racial harassment that the department chose to ignore. But this time is different. This time Richards picked the wrong target. The media siege of the police department is relentless. Every news truck in California seems to be parked outside, broadcasting live updates about the Hells Angels president humiliation case. Social media explodes with videos of the motorcycle convoy, interviews with outraged community members, and legal experts debating the civil rights implications. At 8 p.m., the Hells Angels hold their own press conference outside Brotherhood Customs. Thomas Hammer Rodriguez, wearing his VP patch with pride, addresses the cameras with the measured tone of a man who understands exactly how much power he represents. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club has operated in California for over 70 years, he begins, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. We are a brotherhood that believes in loyalty, respect, and protecting our families. Last night, Officer Richards violated every principle we hold sacred. The reporters lean forward, sensing the gravity of the moment. Our president, Damon Clark, is a respected businessman and family man. He has never been arrested, never caused trouble, never given law enforcement any reason to target him except for the color of his skin. What happened to him and his family last night was not justice. It was a hate crime committed by a racist cop drunk on his own power. The crowd of Hells Angels behind Hammer nods in grim agreement, their leather vests and patches creating an intimidating backdrop to his words. We demand justice through the legal system, Hammer continues. But make no mistake, the Hells Angels do not forget. We do not forgive, and we will not allow this kind of disrespect to go unanswered. The press conference ends with a simple statement that sends chills through every law enforcement officer watching. Officer Richards humiliated our president in front of his family. Now he will face the consequences of that choice. Meanwhile, at Murphy's bar, Officer Richards is finally beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. The television above the bar shows footage of the motorcycle convoy, and the bartender turns up the volume for Hammer's press conference. Holy shit, Mike, his drinking buddy whispers. That's the guy you arrested last night? Richards stares at the screen, watching hundreds of Hells Angels standing in formation, and for the first time since the arrest, he feels genuine fear. The man he forced to crawl, the man he humiliated in front of his daughters, commands the loyalty of an army. His phone buzzes with a text from his sergeant. Get to the station now. We need to talk. The internal affairs investigation explodes into a federal civil rights case within 48 hours. The Department of Justice announces a full review of the Sacramento Police Department's practices, with particular focus on racial bias and excessive force. The viral video of Damon's humiliation becomes Exhibit A in what legal experts predict will be a landmark civil rights lawsuit. But the legal system moves slowly and the Hells Angels operate on a different timeline. The psychological warfare begins immediately. Richards finds motorcycles parked outside his apartment complex every morning. Not threatening, not illegal, just present. Hells Angels members shop at his grocery store, eat at his favorite restaurants, fill up gas where he gets gas. They don't approach him, don't speak to him, don't break any laws. They just make sure he knows they're watching. The pressure on the police department becomes unbearable. City council meetings turn into shouting matches as community members demand Richards' termination and systemic reform. The police union tries to defend him, but even they understand the optics of supporting a cop who forced a Hells Angels president to crawl like a dog. Damon, meanwhile, maintains the perfect balance between his public role as a humiliated victim and his private identity as a motorcycle club president. His interviews are measured and dignified, focusing on the civil rights violations and the trauma to his family. But behind the scenes, he coordinates the Hells Angels' response with the precision of a military operation. No violence, he tells his assembled chapter presidents during a closed-door meeting at Brotherhood Customs. No illegal activity. No giving them any excuse to claim we're the bad guys. But I want Richards to understand that actions have consequences. I want him to feel every day what it's like to be watched, judged, and reminded of your place. The Hells Angels campaign of legal intimidation is masterful. They attend every public meeting where Richards might appear. They file formal complaints about his past conduct. They organize peaceful protests outside the police station. They make their presence felt in every legal and constitutional way possible. Most effectively, they make sure everyone in Sacramento knows exactly who Officer Richards disrespected. The story spreads through social media, motorcycle clubs across the country, and the broader community until Richards becomes the most infamous cop in America. The man who made a Hells Angels president crawl. The breaking point comes when Officer Wilson formally requests a transfer and provides Internal Affairs with a detailed account of Richards' pattern of racial harassment. His testimony, combined with the viral video evidence and the federal pressure, creates an unstoppable momentum toward justice. "I can't work with him anymore," Wilson tells Detective Stone during his formal interview. "I can't be complicit in this kind of behavior. What he did to that family was evil, and knowing who Mr. Clark really is just makes it worse. You don't humiliate a man like that in front of his children, no matter who he is." As the investigation deepens, more victims come forward. Other black families share their stories of harassment by Richards, creating a pattern of abuse that can no longer be ignored or covered up. The Hells Angels' presence gives these families courage, knowing that someone with real power is finally holding Richards accountable. The psychological toll on Richards becomes visible. He looks haggard, jumpy, constantly checking over his shoulder. His fellow officers avoid him, understanding that association with the man who humiliated a Hells Angels president could be career suicide. He's become radioactive, a liability too dangerous to defend. The final confrontation comes when Richards is called into Chief Anderson's office to face the disciplinary board. As he walks through the police station, he passes windows that look out onto the street where dozens of motorcycles are parked. Hells Angels members maintaining their legal, peaceful, but psychologically devastating vigil. The message is clear. Justice is coming. The only question is whether it comes through the legal system or through the code of the Brotherhood. Either way, Officer Richards' reckoning has arrived. The disciplinary hearing takes place in the main conference room of Sacramento Police Headquarters on a gray Thursday morning that will define the rest of Officer Michael Richards' life. Outside, 200 Hells Angels members maintain their silent vigil, their motorcycles gleaming in formation like a mechanized honor guard waiting for justice. Richards enters the room to find it packed beyond capacity. The formal disciplinary board sits at the front table. Chief Anderson, Internal Affairs Detective Stone, a police union representative, and the city attorney. But it's the gallery that stops him cold. 3 rows of Hells Angels members in full colors, their leather vests displaying patches earned through decades of loyalty and brotherhood. They don't speak, don't move, don't acknowledge Richards' entrance. They simply stare with the collective intensity of men who have traveled hundreds of miles to witness this moment. Damon Clark sits in the front row, no longer the humiliated victim from the viral video, but every inch the president he truly is. His presence commands the room without him saying a word. Behind him, Thomas Hammer Rodriguez and the other chapter officers maintain perfect discipline, but their message is unmistakable. We are here. We are watching. We remember. This hearing will determine the employment status of Officer Michael Richards following the incident of October 29th. Chief Anderson begins, his voice steady despite the unprecedented nature of the proceeding. "Officer Richards, you stand accused of excessive force, civil rights violations, and conduct unbecoming an officer. The evidence presentation is devastating. The viral video plays on the large screen showing every detail of that night. The unnecessary escalation, the racial slurs, the forced kneeling, and the moment that shocked the world. A decorated police officer forcing a family man to crawl like a dog across his own driveway. But now the video has context. Every person in that room knows they're watching the systematic humiliation of a Hells Angels president, a man who commands the loyalty of hundreds of bikers across multiple states. The gasps from the gallery aren't just about the obvious injustice, they're about the magnitude of Richards' miscalculation. Officer Wilson takes the stand as the key witness, his testimony cutting through Richards' defenses like a blade. "I've worked with Officer Richards for 8 months, he says, his voice clear and strong. What happened that night wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern of racial harassment that I failed to report because I was a coward. Wilson's detailed account of Richard's previous incidents creates a portrait of systematic abuse that the department can no longer ignore. Traffic stops that became interrogations, wellness checks that became humiliation sessions, a consistent pattern of targeting black families in affluent neighborhoods. But this time was different, Wilson continues, looking directly at Richards. This time he picked the wrong target. Mr. Clark handled the situation with more dignity and restraint than my partner showed him. Even while being forced to crawl, he maintained his composure and protected his family. Richard's union representative tries to mount a defense, arguing about the pressures of police work and the split-second decisions officers must make. But his arguments collapse under the weight of the evidence and the gravity of the assembled audience. When Damon takes the stand, the room falls completely silent. He speaks with the measured authority of a man accustomed to command, his words carrying weight that transcends his role as victim. "I am a businessman, a husband, and a father," he begins, his voice calm but powerful. "I have led men in difficult situations for over 15 years. I understand respect, discipline, and the proper use of authority. What Officer Richards did that night was none of those things. Damon's testimony is devastating in its restraint. He doesn't mention the Hell's Angels. He doesn't threaten or intimidate. He simply describes the systematic humiliation of his family with the precision of someone who understands exactly how power works. Officer Richards didn't just assault me physically," Damon continues. "He forced my daughters to watch their father crawl like an animal. He destroyed their sense of safety in their own home. He violated every principle that law enforcement claims to represent." The moment that breaks Richards comes when Damon looks directly at him and speaks with quiet intensity. "I have commanded respect from dangerous men in dangerous situations for decades, but I have never, ever forced anyone to crawl. That level of cruelty is foreign to me, even in my worst moments." The implication hangs in the air like smoke. This Hell's Angels president, this man who operates in a world where violence is commonplace, found Richards' actions beyond the pale of acceptable behavior. Community members testify about the impact of the viral video, the trauma to the Clark family, and the damage to police-community relations. But it's the silent presence of the Hell's Angels that provides the real context for the proceeding. These aren't just observers. They're a reminder of the real-world consequences when someone with genuine power is humiliated beyond endurance. The climax comes when Chief Anderson reads the board's decision. "Officer Michael Richards, you are hereby terminated from the Sacramento Police Department effective immediately. Your badge, weapon, and all department property must be surrendered. Criminal charges for civil rights violations will be forwarded to the district attorney's office." Richards staggers as if physically struck. 20 years of law enforcement career gone in an instant because he couldn't resist the urge to humiliate a black family he assumed was powerless. But the board isn't finished. Furthermore, you are banned from any law enforcement position in the state of California. Your pension benefits are suspended pending the outcome of criminal proceedings, and you will issue a public apology to the Clark family for your actions. The final humiliation comes when Richards is forced to stand before the cameras outside the police station with hundreds of Hell's Angels as his backdrop and read a prepared statement apologizing to the man he forced to crawl. "I apologize to Damon Clark and his family for my unprofessional conduct," he reads, his voice shaking. "My actions were inexcusable and do not represent the values of law enforcement." As he speaks, Damon stands 20 feet away, surrounded by his brothers, no longer kneeling but standing tall as the president he has always been. The contrast with that night on the driveway is complete. Richards diminished and humiliated while Damon commands respect from hundreds of loyal followers. The civil settlement announced the next day sends another shockwave through law enforcement. $5.2 million to the Clark family, the largest police misconduct settlement in Sacramento history. But more importantly, the case triggers federal oversight of the entire department and mandatory reforms that will prevent future incidents. Officer Wilson receives commendation for his courage in testifying and is promoted to community liaison, charged with rebuilding trust between police and the neighborhoods they serve. His transformation from silent enabler to vocal reformer becomes a model for other officers struggling with similar ethical challenges. The Hells Angels, having achieved justice through legal channels, begin their coordinated departure from Sacramento. But their message has been delivered with unmistakable clarity. Respect must be earned, power has consequences, and some humiliations demand a reckoning that extends far beyond the courtroom. Richards walks out of the police station for the last time, his career destroyed, his reputation ruined, facing federal criminal charges for civil rights violations. The man who thought he was teaching someone about knowing their place has learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the person you force to their knees commands more loyalty and respect than you ever will. 6 months later, Officer Michael Richards works the night shift at a 24-hour diner, his law enforcement career destroyed. Customers occasionally recognize him from the viral video, the cop who made a Hells Angels president crawl, and their stares follow him as he refills coffee cups and clears tables. His federal trial for civil rights violations begins next month. The prosecutors have made it clear that conviction is inevitable. The man who once wielded a badge now faces prison time for his crimes. Meanwhile, Damon Clark has returned to his dual life with renewed purpose. Iron Brotherhood Customs operates as both legitimate business and Hells Angels headquarters, but now it's also a symbol of justice prevailing over abuse of power. The Clark family emerged stronger. Sarah became a national spokesperson for police reform, speaking at law enforcement academies about the lasting trauma of police misconduct. Maya and Zoe, now college freshmen studying criminal justice and law, understand that true strength means choosing when to use power and when to show restraint. The Hells Angels' presence in Sacramento normalized into unexpected community engagement. Damon's chapter now participates in charity rides, toy drives, and veteran support programs. The same men who once seemed threatening now volunteer at food banks and mentor at-risk youth. The police department transformed under federal oversight. The Clark Protocol became standard procedure. Comprehensive background checks, mandatory body camera review, and immediate suspension for officers showing racial bias patterns. New recruits learn about misconduct consequences through case studies featuring Richards' catastrophic mistakes. Officer Wilson, now Sergeant Wilson, leads community policing initiatives that rebuilt trust between law enforcement and minority communities. His transformation from silent enabler to vocal reformer inspires other officers to speak up about witnessed misconduct. The ripple effects continue spreading across law enforcement nationwide. The Clark case is taught in police academies as an example of how bias and unchecked authority can destroy careers and expose departments to federal intervention. Damon still rides through Sacramento's streets, but now he's recognized as a leader to be respected rather than a threat to be contained. The Hells Angels' presence that once terrified the city became a source of unexpected community pride. On quiet evenings, Damon sits on his front porch in the same neighborhood where he was once forced to crawl. His family continues their lives, the American dream interrupted but not destroyed, in the house at 1247 Maple Street. The viral video that made him famous for the wrong reasons became proof that dignity survives humiliation. Justice emerges from injustice, and sometimes the person you force to their knees should never bow to anyone. Have you ever judged someone's power by appearance rather than character? Have you assumed silence meant weakness rather than wisdom? This story reminds us that respect must be earned, authority exercised with restraint, and humiliation reveals who people really are. If this story moved you, share it with others who need this message. Like this video to help it reach people facing injustice. Subscribe to Black Soul Stories for more stories proving dignity triumphs over degradation, because sometimes the person you force to kneel teaches you what it means to stand tall.